I was barefoot on my porch, sipping coffee with one hand and holding a rifle in the other, just wrapping up a safety class for a couple of buddies. It was one of those quiet mountain mornings where the birds are louder than the people, and the only real plan was to make some hot dogs over the fire pit later. That's when I noticed the blue and red lights cutting through the trees. A sheriff's cruiser slowly made its way up my dirt road, tires crunching over gravel like a movie entrance no one asked for. My first thought? Someone must be lost. But no, the deputy steps out, hand resting on his belt, and says, "We got a call about some kind of armed extremist situation. Something about an illegal fire and potential threats to a nearby neighborhood." I blinked. "You mean the campfire? The one with 3 pine cones and a marshmallow stick?" He didn't laugh. I don't blame him. It wasn't a joke to him yet, but it sure as hell was to me. Turns out the call came from someone named Cheryl, president of a homeowners association, 3 miles away. She told dispatch I was holding unsanctioned weapons training on a compound in the woods. The same compound, mind you, that's just my off-grid cabin with no paved driveway and a rusty barbecue grill. The sheriff glanced at the setup. 2 benches, paper targets, ear protection, and pretty quickly realized this was the safest rifle class in the county. But in that moment, standing there with a lukewarm coffee and a confused cop in front of me, it hit me. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It wasn't about fire safety or noise or even rifles. This was about control. This was about someone trying to reach into a place they had no business reaching. That's when I knew. This wasn't petty. This was war. Before all this nonsense started, I was just trying to live quiet. I'd spent a big chunk of my adult life dealing with real problems, the kind that come with sand in your boots, not emails about lawn decorations. After enough years overseas, ducking real bullets and working under pressure that actually mattered, I hit a wall. City life didn't do it for me. Traffic, noise, people arguing over nothing. It all felt like a bad joke with no punchline. So I cashed out early and started looking for a place where I could finally breathe. I found it up in the mountains. A rough little cabin tucked so far off the map you'd miss it, unless you already knew where to look. No paved road, no neighbors in shouting distance, no signal unless you climb a boulder and hold your phone like you're sending a smoke signal. And that's exactly what I wanted. Just trees, birds, the occasional wild turkey wandering past, and a sky full of stars you could actually see. Best part? No HOA. That was the deal breaker for me. I wasn't about to pay someone to tell me how tall my grass should be, or what color I'm allowed to paint my porch. I didn't want rules. I wanted peace. My plan was simple. Fix up the place, build a proper fire pit, cook some food under open sky, and teach a few veterans like me how to handle rifles safely. Nothing crazy, just back to basics kind of stuff. I liked waking up to silence, making coffee on the stove, and knowing I didn't owe anyone an explanation for how I lived. That little patch of land wasn't just dirt and trees, it was freedom. Or at least, that's what I thought before Cheryl showed up. It was a calm afternoon when I met Cheryl for the first time. I was outside, halfway through stacking some firewood, when I heard tires crunching up the gravel. That was already strange. Nobody ever drives up here unless they're lost or invited. I looked up and saw this shiny white SUV slowly rolling toward my cabin like it was scared to touch dirt. Out steps this woman, dressed like she was heading to a PTA meeting, not hiking into the woods. She looked around like the trees offended her. She didn't even say hi. Just walked up, wrinkled her nose, and said, "A lot of us down the mountain are concerned about the smoke." I stared at her for a second, then looked over at my fire pit, which at that point was just barely giving off any heat. Maybe 3 sticks and a couple of pine cones burning slow. "That?" I asked, thinking maybe she was joking. She wasn't. She went on about air quality and fire hazards like I was running a tire fire or something. Then she dropped the line. I'm the president of the Whispering Pines HOA, and your property falls within our buffer zone. Buffer zone? I almost laughed. I told her flat out that this land was mine, outside any HOA boundary, and not part of her little kingdom. I even went inside and came back with the deed, unfolded it right in front of her. She squinted at it like it was written in a different language, then straightened up and said, "Well, we'll see about that." And just like that, she got back in her spotless spaceship of an SUV and drove off without another word. I should have known right then. This wasn't going to be the last I saw of her. A few days after Cheryl's little visit, I figured that was it. Just another bored HOA type poking around where she didn't belong. But then I got an email. No subject line, just formal notice of violation in bold at the top. I opened it expecting spam or maybe someone trying to sell me insurance, but nope. It was from Cheryl. Somehow she'd found my email, and attached was what looked like a fake HOA ticket. It had everything. Bold red letters, an HOA logo I'd never seen before, and a list of violations. Apparently, I was guilty of unauthorized fire activity and discharging firearms within community proximity. Whatever that means, I read it twice just to make sure I wasn't missing a punchline. The fire she was talking about? That was me boiling water for tea. And the discharging firearms part? That was a legal, quiet little rifle safety class with 2 people and paper targets. I laughed out loud, took a screenshot of her so-called violation, slapped a "nice try" watermark across it in Comic Sans, and sent it back with a Judge Judy eye-roll gif. You'd think that would end it, but Cheryl doubled down. Her next email ditched the fake ticket style and went full meltdown. She called me reckless, accused me of endangering lives, and even said I was sowing fear into a peaceful community. Keep in mind, the nearest neighbor is about 1.5 miles away, and most of what surrounds me is trees and wildlife. I replied with a quote from the Constitution and a Captain America salute gif. Probably didn't help, but I wasn't about to let her take this seriously while I'm just trying to enjoy my own land. Then the whispers started. I stopped at the hardware store in town, and the guy at the counter gave me a weird look. "Heard you're stirring things up down in Whispering Pines," he said. Turns out Cheryl was holding community meetings, actual meetings, warning people about the militia man on the ridge. She was telling people I was running combat drills and training unstable people. I nearly choked on my coffee. This wasn't just annoying anymore. It was getting ridiculous. It was a Saturday. Quiet, like always. I had a couple of veteran buddies up for the weekend, and we were holding a basic rifle safety class out back. Legal, permitted, fully above board. We had benches, safety gear, clearly marked zones. Honestly, it looked more organized than some actual ranges I've seen. We weren't even shooting live rounds at that point, just walking through field strip steps and handling rules. Then, about 40 minutes in, I heard tires again. This time it was the sheriff's cruiser. Sheriff McCulley stepped out slow. No urgency. One hand on his belt, the other holding a travel mug. I could tell right away he wasn't here for anything serious. I nodded, said, "Let me guess. Cheryl?" He smirked. Bingo. Apparently she called 911 saying there was armed training activity at a militia compound and something about domestic threats. She made it sound like we were out here planning a siege. McCulley just shook his head and said, "You again." We'd already been through this before. He'd seen the permits, the layout, the waiver forms. Everything was solid. He didn't even ask to check them again. He just sipped his coffee, looked around, and said, "Everything good?" I said, "Yep, unless someone's offended by ear protection." He hung around for a minute to show face, then left. Cheryl, of course, wasn't far. I spotted her not too deep in the woods, still on her phone, probably trying to call someone else now that the sheriff wasn't on her side. You'd think she would take the hint, But instead, things got weirder. A couple days later, I'm out chopping wood when I hear a buzzing sound. I look up and see a drone hovering above the tree line. Not just any drone, a fancy one with a zoom lens and a sticker on the side. It had the Whispering Pines HOA logo on it. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't Cheryl acting alone anymore. This was bigger. This was planned. They weren't just watching. They were documenting, like I was some kind of problem they needed to handle. It wasn't fear I felt. It was something else. Calm, sharp, focused. If they wanted to play this like a mission, I'd treat it like one. But this time I wasn't just going to sit around waiting for the next fake accusation. It was just after sunset when things crossed the line from annoying to serious. I had set up a small fire to cook dinner. Nothing big, just enough to grill a couple of burgers. Went inside to grab seasoning, maybe 2 minutes tops. When I came back out, the fire was out. Not burned out. Put out. The smell hit me first. Sharp, chemical, wrong. I leaned in, and that's when I noticed the firewood was soaked. The logs were wet, not with water, but something strong that stung my nose. Bleach. Someone had poured bleach on my firewood. Right in the middle of the soaked pile was a laminated flyer, tucked neatly into a plastic sleeve. On it, printed like some kind of official notice, were phrases like "final warning," "continued non-compliance," and "civil steps will be initiated." It was signed by something called the Whispering Pines Community Oversight Committee. Not Cheryl, not even her by name. This was bigger. This was organized. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just her personal grudge anymore. She'd roped in the whole HOA, or at least enough people to make it feel like they had some kind of authority. They didn't. But they were acting like they did. They weren't just watching from a distance or sending fake emails now. They had stepped onto my property. They had tampered with my home. That firewood was mine. That fire pit was mine. And now bleach was soaking into my land because someone didn't like me cooking dinner. I stood there, holding that plastic flyer, and I wasn't even angry. Yet. I was done being passive, though. I'd played defense long enough. If they wanted to act like this was some kind of war, then fine. I wasn't going to yell or stomp or throw threats around like they did. I was going to hit back in a way they wouldn't expect, with planning, with paperwork, with everything done exactly by the book. It was time to stop waiting for them to show up and start making sure they regretted every step they took toward my gate. After the bleach stunt, I stopped waiting for the next punch. I called up some friends, vets I served with, off-grid neighbors, even a couple retired cops. Told them I had an idea. Nothing wild, nothing illegal, just a little get-together. We'd grill, teach some skills, maybe hold a few safety talks. But this time, we'd do it by the book, top to bottom. Permits, insurance, safety zones, all locked down tight. I filed everything with the county, notified the fire marshal, and even gave the sheriff a heads up. When I told him the name of the event, Campfire Freedom Fest, he laughed and said, "Let me know when to show up. I'll bring chili." Word spread fast. People were tired of the HOA drama, and the thought of pushing back without breaking a single rule lit a fire under the local crowd. One guy brought a smoker big enough to feed 50. Someone else showed up with a PA system. We set up tables for firearm safety, basic first aid, wilderness survival tips. It wasn't a rally. It wasn't a protest. It was a well-organized, community-centered day in the woods. And it was 100% legal. By mid-afternoon, the place was packed. Families with kids, old-timers in lawn chairs, veterans swapping stories by the grill. Everyone had a smile. The sheriff showed up, true to his word, bowl of chili in hand, just walking around and making sure no one needed anything. Everything was peaceful, controlled, chill. Right until Cheryl showed up. She came stomping up the trail like she was leading a charge. 2 board members behind her and some poor guy in a cheap suit who claimed to be her lawyer. They walked straight up to me, handed me a crumpled envelope, and announced they were serving a cease and desist. I opened it, saw some Google Doc printout full of vague threats and community buzzwords, and handed it right back. "This has no legal weight," I said, "but the paper's decent. Thanks." That's when she cracked. Started yelling about how I was staging symbolic acts of aggression and causing mental distress to the community. No one knew what she meant. Was it the campfire? The chili? The t-shirts? A buddy of mine was live streaming the event for people who couldn't make it, and the camera caught everything. Her yelling, trying to block the lens, shouting about bylaws while people stood around awkwardly eating ribs. Then it happened. She tried to shove one of the volunteers aside to get into the central tent. The sheriff, who had been watching from a distance, put down his chili and calmly walked over. "Ma'am, step back," he said. She didn't. She kept ranting, so he cuffed her right there in front of everyone. Crowd went silent. Then someone laughed. Then a few more did. Within seconds, the whole place was buzzing with quiet chuckles and wide eyes. They led her to the cruiser. Her board members vanished. And just like that, the event kept rolling. Music came back on. Grill fired up again. Campfire Freedom Fest didn't just work, it won. And Cheryl? Well, her meltdown went viral before the sun even set. After Freedom Fest, I had everything I needed. Footage of Cheryl losing it, printed flyers, drone videos, emails. Every little threat and trespass was now part of a growing stack of evidence. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was organized. I handed the whole file to a lawyer who knew his way around nuisance and harassment cases. We filed a formal complaint with the county, backed by timestamps, witness statements, and yes, even the drone footage with the HOA logo clear as day. I also filed a separate report with the FAA for illegal drone use over private property. Turns out flying a camera drone over someone's land without permission, especially for monitoring, doesn't go over well. Things moved fast after that. The county finally took notice. Cheryl had crossed a line. Too many, actually. And now the people who once nodded along with her were getting nervous. Nobody likes being part of a sinking ship. A few of her HOA board members resigned quietly, slipping out before the fallout got worse. But it was already too late. An emergency HOA vote was called, and Cheryl, who once saw herself as the protector of suburban peace, was about to get shown the door. I didn't go to the vote meeting, but a neighbor who did sent me a full play-by-play. Cheryl walked in like she still ran the place, armed with a full PowerPoint presentation titled "The Threat on the Ridge." It included blurry, over-zoomed screenshots of me holding a rifle from public posts, years old, and slides with titles like "Protecting Our Future" in red letters. Her voice cracked halfway through. Someone in the room actually asked if they could skip to the vote. They did. Final tally, 9-1. The one, of course, being Cheryl herself. Later that week, I got a letter in the mail from the newly elected HOA president. Hand-signed formal apology. Said they didn't support what Cheryl had done and wanted to make it right. Included was a small settlement, just enough to cover legal fees and then some. But more importantly, it came with a written agreement. Whispering Pines HOA would never again attempt to interfere with my property. No more emails. No more drone flyovers. No more Cheryl. Just like that, it was over. And this time, for real. I didn't spend the settlement money on something flashy. No new truck, no fancy gear. Instead, I used it to build something that mattered. Just a few more cabins, some extra open land, and enough space for other veterans to come out, breathe, and not be told what to do by some clipboard-wielding committee. I called it Camp Cheryl's Freedom Ranch. Yeah, I leaned all the way into it. Had a wooden sign carved from solid oak, clean and simple, with the name on top and one line underneath. Respect is earned, not legislated. I posted a picture of the sign on the barely used cabin page, and somehow it took off. Veterans groups started sharing it. Off-grid forums lit up. Some people thought it was fake. Others asked if they could visit. A few even offered to help fund more cabins. I politely said no. We weren't turning it into anything big. Just a quiet place for people who'd seen too much to be told what color their mailbox should be. Every now and then, I see cars drive by slow at the bottom of the trail. Some stop, some take pictures. One group of hikers posed in front of the sign like it was a national park marker. I was on the porch that morning, coffee in hand, watching from a distance. One of them looked up and spotted me and yelled out, "You're a hero!" I didn't say anything back, just raised my mug a little and smiled. Things are quiet now. No more drones, no more flyers, just the sound of trees swaying and firewood cracking right. And every so often, when the wind shifts just right, I think I hear Cheryl's voice drifting through the pines, something about bylaws or buffer zones, but out here, that's just background noise. I take another sip of coffee and let it fade.